there are places on Earth where one wrong step means falling into freezing water. Places where the floor is rotting reed, where the ground never stops moving, where the air itself fights you. And still, people stayed. Communities who looked at the most hostile ground on the planet and decided this would be home. Today we meet 15 of them. By the end, home may never mean the same thing again. The Urus. At 12,500 feet above sea level, on the border between Peru and Bolivia, there is a lake so high that boats can barely breathe up there. It's called Titicaca, but what makes it strange isn't the altitude. It's what floats on top of it. More than 80 artificial islands built entirely out of reeds, and on top of them lives a people who have avoided touching solid ground for over 500 years. The Urus? Imagine the floor under your feet doesn't exist. Every step sinks slightly. Your kitchen, your bed, your entire home is floating on water so cold that falling in can end your life in minutes. That's Tuesday. They didn't start out here. 5 centuries ago, the Urus lived on the shoreline until the Inca Empire arrived, and then the Spanish. So they retreated to the one place nobody wanted to follow them, the center of the lake. They built islands, not out of earth, out of reed, and they never came back. The islands are made from blocks of floating reed root, then layer after layer of dried reed stacked on top. Here's the problem. The base is rotting constantly. Every single week, they have to add new material just to keep from sinking. An island never stops needing repair. Walk across one and the ground gives moves, cracks under you. Children learn from birth how to distribute their weight, how not to jump, how to move slowly. One mistake is enough to break through the surface. The reed isn't just the floor. It's also food. They chew the soft white core for water and a little energy. They fish, they hunt birds among the reeds, and in winter, when fishing dries up, they wade chest deep into freezing water to collect eggs. The sun at this altitude burns without mercy. The skin cracks, the hands harden, and altitude sickness is simply part of daily life here. They speak Aymara, a language with words that only make sense in this exact place. Words for the winds of the lake. Words for the sound reeds make as they rot beneath your feet. They call the lake Kotamama, Mother Lake. Before fishing, before building a new island, they make offerings because they know the same lake that feeds them can also destroy them in a single storm. Today, the Urus way of life is under threat. Tourism, migration, pollution creeping into the water. If the reed disappears, the islands disappear, and 5 centuries of floating against all logic disappear with them. What would you be willing to lose to keep from losing who you are? Leave your answer in the comments and let's keep going, because the next community didn't just live near the water. Their bodies changed because of it. The Bajau. Across the islands of the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia lives a people who have spent generations living almost entirely on open water. An adult Bahau fisherman can dive as deep as 70 feet on a single breath. No tank, no wetsuit, just his body, a handmade spear, and hand-carved wooden goggles. They can stay underwater for up to 13 minutes at a time. A professional freediver, someone who has trained for years specifically for this, can last 2 to 4 minutes. The Bahau do it every morning to get breakfast. Scientists studying the Bajau found something extraordinary. Their spleens are significantly larger than neighboring populations on land, which means more oxygen-rich blood released into the body the moment they submerge. It's the same mechanism seals and dolphins use. In the Bahau, it's written into their biology. Many elders deliberately rupture their own eardrums at a young age, on purpose, to relieve the pressure that builds at depth. The pain lasts a few days. The advantage lasts a lifetime. The Bagyao live without calendars, without fixed birth dates. Ask one of them how old they are, and they'll simply smile and shake their head. Time isn't something they measure the way we do. And when their life at sea finally ends, they're brought to land one last time, laid to rest in graves shaped like pointed wooden boats, to begin what they believe is a permanent voyage into the world beyond. Ganvi A. Not every floating village was born from necessity. Some were born from fear. In Benin, West Africa, on Lake Nokoué, tens of thousands of people live entirely above the water in Ganvier. Thousands of homes on wooden stilts driven deep into the mud, with no permanent land beneath any of them. In the 17th century, the Fon people were being hunted by slave traders who, bound by their own religious law, were forbidden from entering water. So the Fon didn't run inland. They walked out onto the lake. They drove wooden posts into the lake bed and built an entire settlement in the one place their enemies were forbidden to follow. Today there are no roads here. Children learn to paddle before they learn almost anything else, because boats are the only way to reach school, the market, or a neighbor's front door. Ganvi A remains the largest stilt village on the African continent, still standing 3 centuries after it was built as a hiding place. But water isn't the only force that can strip away solid ground from under a community. Somewhere else on this list, the danger isn't below your feet. It's the 400 meters of open air beneath you, and the only thing holding you up is a rope somebody promised to replace before it snapped. Meteora. In central Greece, rising out of flat farmland, there are sandstone pillars over 1,300 feet tall. And sitting on top of them, impossibly, are working monasteries, churches, libraries, kitchens, gardens, all of it balanced on the summit of raw rock. Until the 1920s, there was no staircase. The only way up was to climb into a rope net and be winched upward by hand, spinning slowly in open air hundreds of feet above the ground. And when visitors asked how often the rope was replaced, the monks reportedly gave the same answer for centuries, whenever God decided it should break. Construction on the largest monastery began in the 1300s, after a monk named Athanasios climbed the bare rock alone, with no ropes, gripping cracks in the stone with his fingers. He lived up there by himself for months before anyone else followed. The full monastery took more than 50 years to complete, stone by stone, hauled up in a net. Life inside is deliberately harsh. Monks fast more than 200 days a year. Rainwater is collected in stone cisterns because there is no other source up there. Lightning strikes the towers routinely, and there is no fire department hundreds of feet in the sky. But Meteora isn't only a story about faith and vertigo. During the Ottoman occupation, when the Greek language and Greek Orthodox worship were being suppressed on the ground below, these monasteries became secret schools. Children were hauled up in that same rope net to learn to read and write in a language their occupiers had tried to erase. The very isolation that made this place look insane is exactly what kept an entire culture alive. The Abuna Yamata Gu monks. If Meteora looks impossible, Ethiopia found a way to go further. High in the Ethiopian highlands stands a church carved directly into a sandstone tower, more than 8,200 feet above sea level. To reach the door, you climb a sheer rock face with your bare hands. No ropes. No safety gear of any kind. The final approach is a set of footholds barely wide enough for your toes, worn smooth by more than 15 centuries of monks walking the same path. Inside, the church holds priceless manuscripts, handwritten on goatskin, and nobody has ever fully explained how such fragile objects were carried up that cliff in the first place. Beside the entrance, small niches in the rock hold the remains of monks who lived and died here, generation after generation, on the mountain itself. This is considered one of the most dangerous churches on the planet. And monks have been climbing to it on foot without a single safety rope for over 1,000 years. A Tuller village. In Sichuan province, China, there was a village where the morning commute meant scaling a near vertical cliff face. 2,600 feet of it. Roughly 3 Eiffel Towers stacked end to end. By hand. On a ladder made of vines and bamboo. Before class even started. That was simply Tuesday in a Tuller village, until around 2016. There was no other route in or out. Rice, building materials, everything the village needed came up the exact same path the children climbed to reach school. And for years, almost nobody outside the region knew or seemed to care. Then someone photographed the children on that ladder, and the image spread everywhere. Only then did anything change. More than 2,500 steel pipes were installed to build what locals now call the Sky Ladder. It took a viral photograph to make the world notice what these families had been doing, quietly, every single day, for generations. If your children had to climb 2,600 feet just to reach a classroom, would you stay or would you leave everything behind? Tell us in the comments, because this is only the halfway point. 10 more communities are still ahead, and some of them make this cliff look gentle. If this journey has surprised you already, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because the ones coming up are even harder to believe. Ushkuli. Deep in the Caucasus Mountains, above 7,000 feet, sits Ushkuli, one of the highest continuously inhabited settlements in Europe. Landslides and blizzards can cut it off from the world for months at a time. But what defines this place isn't the altitude. It's the towers. More than 30 of them, some standing 70 to 80 feet tall, built between the 9th and 12th centuries. Every extended family had their own tower, built for one purpose: blood feuds and sieges that could last for weeks. The architecture here is essentially a map of old conflicts, written in stone. You don't look at a house in Ushguli to see who's wealthy. You look at it to see who was still standing when the fighting finally stopped. The Kalasha. In the far north of Pakistan, wedged inside the Hindu Kush Mountains, lies the valley of Bumbaret. The peaks around it rise over 20,000 feet, and the mountain passes connecting it to the outside world close under snow for months every year. Getting in means dirt roads carved into vertical cliffs, where one miscalculation means falling hundreds of feet with nothing to stop you. This is home to the Kalasha, a people who have held on here for more than 1,000 years. Winters drop below -15 degrees Fahrenheit. Summers burn with brutal sun, but the cold always comes back at night. They didn't choose this valley out of preference. Over 1,000 years ago, as Islam spread through the region, they were pushed into these remote mountains. They didn't convert. They didn't integrate. They isolated themselves completely, and the mountains became both their refuge and their sentence. Homes are built from wood, stone, and mud, clustered into terraced villages connected by paths that turn to ice in winter. A single fall here can mean weeks, stranded with no medical help of any kind. Inside, homes are thick with smoke from the fire that keeps everyone alive, smoke that stings the eyes and blackens the lungs over a lifetime. But without it, nobody survives the night. The Kalasha are one of the only non-Muslim peoples remaining in Pakistan, which has made them different and made them a target. They speak Kalasha, an endangered language with no equivalent anywhere else on Earth. Their beliefs are animist and polytheist, honoring the spirits of mountains, trees, and rivers with offerings, convinced that neglecting those spirits will turn the land against them. When someone dies here, the body isn't buried underground. It's placed above ground in an open coffin on the mountainside, because to the Kalasha, death doesn't contaminate. It's simply part of the natural cycle continuing on. Today, the pressure to convert, the tourism turning sacred rituals into spectacle, and a changing climate are all closing in at once. And the Kalasha are still here, giving the modern world their back, the same way they have for over 1,000 years. The Drogpa. More than 11,000 feet up, in the far north of India, there's a valley so dry it cracks your lips within hours. Mountains over 20,000 feet ring the entire region, blocking any cloud that tries to bring rain. This is the Dahanu Valley, home to a people who call themselves the last Aryans. Local tradition holds that they descend from soldiers in the army of Alexander the Great, stranded in these mountains more than 2,300 years ago. Genetic studies have found distinctly Indo-European traits among them: lighter skin, green or gray eyes, features unlike anyone else nearby. At this altitude, the air holds roughly 40% less oxygen than at sea level. For anyone arriving from lower ground, the first days here are agony. Headaches, nausea, insomnia that doesn't quit. Their entire economy depends on one animal: the yak. Milk, wool, meat, fuel, an animal that can survive where almost nothing else can. Women here wear the tepi, a headpiece of flowers, feathers, and beads that marks identity and pride in a place where almost everything else has been stripped down to bare survival. The Afar. Below sea level in Ethiopia lies the Danakil Depression, a landscape that looks like it doesn't belong on this planet. Temperatures regularly push past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, sometimes touching 122. Acid pools bubble in neon yellow and green. Active lava lakes glow nearby. NASA has actually used this terrain to study what conditions on other planets might look like. The Afar people have lived here for centuries anyway. The extreme heat evaporates water so fast it leaves behind thick white crusts of pure salt. Every day, Afar camel caravans cross these flats to cut that salt into rectangular blocks by hand, called a mole, and haul them to highland markets. Until the 20th century, those blocks weren't just traded goods. They were the official currency of the Ethiopian Empire. The Afar also live by a code called FEMA. If you enter their territory as a guest, they are obligated to share their water with you, feed you, and protect you, even at cost to themselves. In a place where a single drop of water is the difference between living and dying, they will hand you theirs first. The heat here didn't break the Afar. They turned it into an economy that funded an empire. But if fire can be turned into wealth, what happens when the opposite extreme takes over? What happens when the cold becomes so absolute that it rewrites the rules of survival itself? That story is next, and it might be the most extreme climate on this entire list. The Yakut. Oymyakon means unfrozen water, named for a thermal spring that stays liquid even when everything around it has turned solid. In winter, temperatures here drop to -96 degrees Fahrenheit, colder than an average day on Mars. At that temperature, your breath crystallizes before it leaves your mouth. Rubber shatters on contact. Turn a car engine off and you may never start it again. Then summer arrives and the same village can hit 86 degrees Fahrenheit. The annual swing can exceed 180 degrees. No other permanently inhabited place on Earth experiences anything close to that whiplash. The Yakut people don't just survive one extreme. They survive both, back to back, every single year. Because permafrost makes farming nearly impossible, their food culture is built entirely around what the cold preserves. Their signature dish is stroganina, thin curls of frozen river fish, shaved straight off a block and eaten raw with salt and pepper. It dissolves on the tongue like savory ice. They didn't find a way around the cold. They turned it into a way of life. The Korowai. In the deep rainforest of Papua, Indonesia, some Korowai families build their homes at the very top of a tree, 150 feet off the ground. No crane, no harness, just wood, vines, and total confidence in the forest around them. The easy explanation is predators, disease, and rival tribes. Height as protection. And that part is true. But the deeper story of the Korowai isn't really about how high they build. It's about one single tree, the sago palm. Its starch is what they eat. Its leaves become the roof. Its bark becomes the floor. And when the tree eventually dies and rots, the decomposing wood draws in fat white grubs, which the Korowai consider a delicacy. One tree. An entire life cycle, start to finish. Here's something most people don't know. Many of the dramatic tree houses shown in documentaries were actually built specifically for the cameras, commissioned by foreign film crews. Most Korowai families today live at ground level in villages encouraged by the government. Elevation as medicine, sometimes. And sometimes, elevation is just good television. The miners of La Rinconada. At nearly 17,000 feet in the Peruvian Andes sits La Rinconada, the highest permanent human settlement on Earth. The air holds roughly half the oxygen available at sea level, so altitude sickness isn't a risk you plan for. It's simply the permanent condition of being alive here. People don't come for the view. They come for gold. Beneath this frozen mountain lies one of the richest gold veins in South America, governed by a system called the Cachorreo. Miners work underground for 30 straight days without any pay at all. Toxic fumes, near-total darkness, freezing temperatures, constant risk of collapse, mercury exposure. All of it unpaid. On the 31st day, each miner is allowed to carry out as much raw ore as his body can physically hold. That sack might contain enough gold to change his life. It might contain worthless rock. He won't know which until it's processed. Work every single month is a gamble, and the mountain always keeps better odds than the miners do. Women are forbidden from entering the shafts based on a superstition that their presence makes the gold disappear. So they work outside instead, on the frozen slopes, sifting through discarded rock with bare hands in sub-zero cold. They're called palanqueras. Inside the mountain, miners pray to El Tío, the lord of the underworld, offering coca leaves, cigarettes, and alcohol, asking him to reveal the gold, and asking him to keep the mountain from collapsing on them. The Dogon. Centuries before telescopes existed, the Dogon people of Mali's Bandiagara escarpment had detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, including Sirius B, a white dwarf star completely invisible to the naked eye, one that Western science didn't even confirm until 1862. How exactly the Dogon knew this remains unresolved to this day. But their everyday brilliance shows up most clearly in a single building at the center of every village, the Toguna, the House of Words. It's an open-air meeting space where elders gather to debate and resolve disputes, part parliament, part courthouse, all under one roof. The most important design feature is the ceiling height, built intentionally low enough that no adult can stand up straight inside it. If an argument gets heated and someone tries to rise to their feet, they immediately crack their head on the packed millet stalk roof and have to sit back down. The Dogon engineered a physical consequence for losing your temper directly into the architecture of the room. Their grain storage system follows the same logic. Men and women keep entirely separate granaries. A man's granary holds family staples. A woman's holds her jewelry, her savings, her trade goods, and her husband is forbidden from looking inside without her permission. In a society with no banks and no legal contracts, that granary is a woman's financial independence, protected by a code the entire village respects. Tanah Toraja. In Tanah Toraja, on the island of Sulawesi, when someone dies, they aren't buried immediately. The body stays inside the family home, sometimes for months, sometimes for years, while relatives raise enough money to hold a proper funeral. A real Torajan funeral is a massive communal event, and doing it right takes real resources. Final resting places are carved into sheer limestone cliffs, wooden coffins wedged directly into the rock, and beside them, lifelike wooden effigies of the deceased, called Tau, gazing permanently out over the valley below. Death in Tanah Toraja isn't a single moment. It's a slow transition, tied more to a family's finances than to the moment breathing actually stops. They don't move on from loss. They move around it for as long as it takes. We've seen communities who keep their dead close for years and communities who chose total isolation from the rest of the world while they were still very much alive. Which brings us to the question this entire journey has been building toward.